Everyone was wrong about Scream 7. There were so many different directions that Scream 7 could have pursued, but I think it takes until the second viewing to really hone in on the meaning. Scream 7 is helmed by the original creator Kevin Williamson, and once again follows Sydney's story as if it's a direct continuation from Scream 4. Sydney's trauma stems from her mother, and now as a mother herself, her daughter Tatum now has to deal with this generational trauma. The last scenes of the film showed Tatum acknowledging that although Sydney is a survivor, the horrors of her past were never her choice, and adopting a victim mentality serves no one. Scream 7 is not about who Ghostface is and why. It's about how the final girl lives in spite of Ghostface, and it's the ultimate testament of strength. The meta story in this installment is about toxic fandom in a way that's different from Scream 5, in that the killer is not infatuated with the stab movies. Instead, they idolize Sydney herself. Sydney is the star, and Ghostface does not exist without her. Instead of glorifying the violence of the killers, which mirrors society's fascination with true crime, Scream 7 refocuses on celebrating and acknowledging the survivors. Sydney has tried both running and embracing her past, even going as far as to write a book, Out of Darkness. In this film, Sydney is called out for the hypocrisy of being a survivor but disappearing out of the spotlight, which inevitably fosters this sense of entitlement from the main Ghostface of this film, Jessica. And in this new age, we get a replacement for the voice changer effect. Instead, we get a deep fake of Stu Macher. The deep fake of Stu Macher is used as a form of emotional manipulation. It's not intended as this grand statement about the abuse of AI or its dangers, but rather a tool that is being abused today. Years from now, when we rewatch this will feel very timely in the same way that Scream 4 felt very relevant. Scream 4 at the time was doing live streams and recordings of the killings. The twins, Chad and Mindy, survived, but they really operate in this film as a sense of comic relief. I think the twins could be a really interesting choice for the opening kill in the next installment, and Chad's role has been severely reduced after being set up to be the love interest of Jenna Ortega in the previous film, who was intended to be kind of the anti-Billy. Some interesting details that you might have missed in the opening of Scream 7. In the first kill scene, there's a moment where the Stab 4 poster is framed, which is essentially hinting at the importance of Scream 4. The moment when the animatronic Ghostface is unmasked is foreshadowing the manipulation of technology, which is then going to be the deepfake of Stu Macher. It's once again the film explicitly telling us not to trust what we're seeing. Gale's introduction scene is iconic. I also love how the mechanics of the plot structure are relentless. It's very forward moving. We also get the disruption of that typical pattern pretty early on when the first Ghostface killer is revealed. The entire story, even the marketing, is toying with this idea that Stu is alive. Yet the script explicitly tells the audience over and over again why that's not the case. Yet we ignore it and fall for the red herring instead of questioning the source of information, especially during that mental hospital scene. There's also a really funny detail in that when Gale goes to park and she's right in front of a no parking sign. The people next to me were laughing about that. I was kind of cracking up. But it's also a very simple choice that communicates that Gale is not a rule follower. I also love how effortlessly Gale is able to slip into her reporter persona when she's doing the interview with Sydney. In Scream 7, we also get to see Tatum from the original be celebrated as a survivor and not a victim. I also love how Pine Grove becomes a literal ghost town after curfew, which really broadens the playing field for this home invasion concept. I do think that we should have seen more of Jessica as Sydney's neighbor, mainly to establish how Sydney trusted her, so that the betrayal at the end cut even deeper. Because the theme and overall message of Scream 7 is about trust. Sydney's trust in her daughter to be able to take care of herself, which becomes a larger metaphor for motherhood and your child transitioning into the real world. Which is why Sydney and Jessica's conversation at the coffee shop really resonates. And throughout the film, we continue to see Sydney and Gale's complicated relationship explored because they are still ultimately connected by the Woodsboro murders. So the moment in which Sydney is able to finally tell Gale that she trusts her is huge, because they're not just comrades in a war against Ghostface, they are friends. Some of the missteps that I think people are bumping up against include that bar scene where the kill felt too gimmicky. It was like something that you would have seen in a stab movie. Had they cut that scene slightly earlier before Ghostface picks up Lucas, and we got the blood mixed with alcohol coming out of his mouth. It could have saved that scene, but I think even the elimination of CGI in that moment, if we had used practical effects with more blood, it would have been okay. The best part of that whole sequence is actually when his character is crawling on the floor towards the door, and then he takes his bloody red right hand and slams it, which is a nod to the iconic song. Jessica's speech at the end revealing her motive ran on too long, but even the dialogue itself is aware of that, so those inserted comedic bits actually helped. As a huge Scream fan, I would have celebrated Stu Macher's actual return, but it would have left us with the question of what is the meaning of Scream 7? Because by the end of the film, it's showing that even as Ghostface tries to take Sidney down, she is not alone. She now has her family. Sidney is able to protect and fight for her daughter in a way that her mother was never able to do. Joel McHale is really Sidney's new Dewey. I loved seeing him play more of a badass role and also a loving father and husband. And as a family, they really work together as a team. Scream 7 is all about honoring the final girl as Neve takes the reins back on a franchise that she launched into cult obsession, shifting praise back onto the fighters, not the oppressors, which is what Stu's return would have done. With Kevin Williamson back at the helm, going back to the original is more literal behind the scenes. Scream 7 sets up Scream 8 to completely close off the Scream 5 and 6 installments completely, and potentially bring Stu back once we finally let our guards down and stop expecting and demanding it. We all celebrated Ghostface, but this time Sidney gets the last laugh. Scream 7 really hits home on the second viewing.